Colorado has joined several other states in suing the federal government over an agreement with a company that wants to post instructions online for making 3D printed firearms. Attorneys general from 19 states and the District of Columbia, including Cynthia Kaufman of Colorado, have joined the lawsuit, citing worries that these weapons could be extremely difficult to trace and detect. Of the 19 attorneys general, Kaufman is the only Republican. David, you are our esteemed lawyer at the table. What do we need to know about this, both from the legal standpoint and the details when it comes to the blueprints for 3D printed guns?
Well, some folks remember Attorney General candidate Kaufman's rousing speech at the April 2014 State Republican Assembly, where she fervently indicated that when appropriate, she would sue the federal government over the Second Amendment. It took her a long time to get around to that, and it turned out she was on the other side of what most of the delegates who voted for her expected. But in a legal sense, this is more of a First Amendment issue, because what she is arguing for is censorship of files about how to make firearms. Of the files in question, all but one of them involve traditional metal firearms, which people have always been making at home and indeed have a constitutional right to do so. But she wants the government, which has no legal power over this at the moment, there's never been a law saying you can't distribute information about gun making. She wants to prohibit the distribution of that kind of information. It's an act of futility, among other things, because these files were first posted on the internet in 2013, have been downloaded and shared hundreds of thousands of times, so her proposed censorship idea is futile in any case. And as for the one file out of all the ones she wants to censor, there's only one that involves a gun that actually is made of plastic, and that production instructions comply with the law we've had since 1988, that any firearm you make, whether you're a gun company or you're making a gun at home for yourself, has to have at least 3.7 ounces of steel in it that is in the shape of a firearm. So this plastic gun is fully in compliance with the existing federal law on plastic guns.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I could have heard this wrong, but is that piece of metal in that particular gun has anything to do with the operation of the gun?
No, it's there to comply with the 1988 federal law.
Gotcha. Justine, 19 attorneys general, but one of them is Cynthia Kaufman, and she's the only Republican. Somehow it's always Colorado. We're always involved in these kinds of issues. First Amendment, Second Amendment, a lot to work with here. What do you think?
Well, you know, considering Colorado's history with mass shootings, it seems appropriate that she would take action on this. You know, as we have the discussion year after year of how we're going to make you know, our country safer, how we're going to increase gun laws, or what we should do moving forward. This type of action, I think, is important as we move forward and come up with those solutions. To me, when I hear a plastic gun, that sounds, you know, pretty frightening that somebody could possibly make a gun that is untraceable at home. And also, we already have a hard time identifying weapons. You know, we've had situations, Tamir Rice in Ohio having a toy gun and police not knowing the difference between a real gun and a fake gun. I think there's a lot of issues in this, and considering Colorado's history, I think that this was probably the right move for Cynthia Kaufman.
Ross, has this horse left the, I guess, virtual barn years ago?
Absolutely, it has. I think that the issue of Colorado, you know, a place with a history of mass shootings, I mean, if that's the mindset, you should want everybody to have a plastic gun, because there's no gun less suitable for a mass shooting than a plastic gun that you might get 1 or 2 or 3 shots out of it before it's not useful anymore. But this isn't really a Second Amendment issue. It's a First Amendment issue, and it's prior restraint of somebody being able to say something online, talk about information. The history of jurisprudence in the United States, and David's probably better suited to talk to this than I am, but we don't do prior restraint generally. You get to talk. If someone's going to take what you said and do something wrong with it, then we do something about the bad guy. But we don't just tell people you can't talk. And frankly, what Cynthia Kaufman is doing plays into exactly what I thought when I interviewed her and most of the other Republican candidates for governor on my show, that she was by far the most liberal candidate. So I'm not surprised, but it's meaningless.
Patty, you've only edited a newspaper for 41 years, I think, if I'm doing my math right. So you've probably read a couple things about the First Amendment. First Amendment issue, Second Amendment issue.
It's a First Amendment issue, and like so many First Amendment issues, it's really, really tricky. It's, you know, it's kind of like the KKK marching through Skokie. I mean, or that was it the Nazis, I guess, marching through Skokie. It's the things that are the most hateful for a community are the ones that, to really support the First Amendment, you have to allow. I don't know, first of all, people have much better copiers than I am. Talking about 41 years, I worked in a secretarial pool when copiers were bigger than this table. I still can't get ours, you know, that's now the size of a coffee cup, not to jam. So I don't know how they would be able to do this. It's making me think of when Joyce Meskis at the tattered cover refused to comply with a request to, I think it was the Anarchist Cookbook. But, you know, they're books that tell you how to make bombs, they're books that tell you how to make guns, there are plenty of those things. And she was asked by the feds to comply and say who had bought copies of that book. And she refused, and that is a tricky First Amendment issue, but it's one we have to uphold.